What is up, guys? Welcome to Try Not to Get Scared Challenge. So let's go to this video first. We're gonna try to find the videos without any bad words. And by the way, this is not for kids, okay? So I'm gonna make a sign for kids. And I'm gonna make a sign for kids. Do not watch this video! Thank you. And also, if you are a mature teenager, me.
Guys, don't get scared while watching this video. Yeah, I'm challenging you. But first you must know the rules. Leaving, skipping, or speeding up the video equals automatic fail. So, are you ready? I don't think you are fast enough to like this video, subscribe, and comment whoa before we start. In 3, 2, 1.
Just turn off the lights. That is really strange.
Who's there? Hey, can you keep it down, please? Hi, this is Kim Smith in room 325. The room next door to me keeps banging on the wall. Is there something you can do about that?
I'm sorry, but there's no one checked into the room next to you.
You're sure? Do you think you checked the right room?
Yes, you're the only one on the third floor.
Oh. So she's the only one in that floor.
Okay, there's somebody definitely next door. Can you send someone to check, please?
Sure thing.
Okay. What happened to the other girl? Or is it the same person? Look, this is gonna be a different girl. Why?
Is anyone in here?
See, this is a different girl. What's even going on?
Anyone there?
Okay. Huh? What is even going on?
Front desk.
There's no one in here.
I'll let her know.
Who is that? Oh, now she's gonna oof. Well, looks like she's gone.
Hello.
Hi. We checked the other room. No one's there. Can I help you with anything else?
No.
Okay, so someone just oof. And then who was that other girl? I don't know. Who was this girl that I don't know her name?
Hello? Bye. I'm in the room next door. Can you please stop banging on the walls?
Oh, she's coming. she comes. Is that actually her? Oh, looks like she's gone. That's not good. Okay, time for the next video. Which will be this one. Come on
It's
now.
hard to
There
describe
we
the
go.
feeling of being perfectly at home 1,000 miles from it, or hearing everything while being surrounded by nothing. But once you step inside the all-new 2022 Wagoneer, you get used to it pretty quick.
Yes, guys. Do you get scared easily? Huh? Well, in today's challenge, you have to try not to get scared. Yup. Also, don't leave this challenge in between, or else you will automatically lose. So, are you ready? But first, like this video, subscribe, and comment scary before we begin the
I'm
challenge.
not even gonna do that.
Okay, guys, let's start.
Wait, I thought it would speed up or scoop the video or leave the video. Well, I guess that's added. By the way, I'm watching Mario Strikers on YouTube. I actually played that game yesterday. Go check out that video. What is that creepy doll doing there? Now there's 2 of them. Now there's 4?
David? Could you go in there?
What?
I want to try something.
Uh-oh. What are you gonna do? He's gone. You should not have done that. Wait,
Baby?
what happened to the dolls? I think she said shoot.
David? Wait!
What just happened to him?
So, did you get scared?
No.
Even a little bit? Tell me in the comments.
Alright, what's another one? Oh, what is this one? I think this is the right, is it?
It's going to be the hardest, but one of the greatest things you'll ever do.
It's something that you do to care for people. If you love to do that, then you're going to love the profession.
If you can give a little bit of peace or comfort, it's worth it.
It's truly a calling.
What was that? Was that a Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare? There's no one here. I'm all alone. What was that? I'm always alone in my room. I'm always alone when I make these videos. That's why. I don't really talk that much. But I never done this in my life before. So now, I take James's suggestion and I finally figure out what have I been doing. I have never done this challenge on YouTube, or try not to laugh. It was my first time doing it. I completed 2 try not to laugh videos. This is try not to get scared video. Was that another Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare? Why is there so many Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare? I have no idea why.
Brian Kemp has taken Georgia backwards. He put us backwards on guns, said law enforcement, and made it easier for criminals to carry guns in public. Just when we need to move forward, Brian Kemp keeps taking us back.
That was easy. I think that's it for trying not to get scared. What's the other good one? I have no idea. Oh yeah, The Legend of Zelda. I never done that before. Alright, let's search that up. Alright, we're gonna check out The Legend of Zelda history. I mean, come on, who loves history? I do. Unfortunately, this is a creepy game, so that's why I figured out to choose this game. This is very long. Let's do The Legend of Zelda history. Now that's what I want. The Legend of Zelda. Wait. No, not Hulu. Oh my god. Okay, at least it saved where I was. What was the turn up again? Oh yeah, history. Oh my god. I'm gonna try to say it. History. Okay, that's how you spell it. So it's H-I. Where's I? Ooh, timeline is always good. There's a bunch of them that I want to do. I know what the first one is. Here, I'll show you. It's this video right here. The timeline of Legend of Zelda. I'm also reacting to them, okay? There you go.
The Zelda timeline is almost as legendary as the titular character. The games are all connected by one of the most convoluted and intricate timelines in gamedom. Even with the help of Nintendo's Hyrule Historia, understanding it is a heroic quest all on its own. So we're gonna dig into the most up-to-date Zelda timeline humanly possible. Nintendo swapped some things around in August 2018, and a few games were released after the Historia, but we got you. Thousands of years before Ocarina of Time creation. The world was created out of chaos by three goddesses, Din, Nehru, and Furore. Their work done, the three goddesses up and leave, but for reasons unknown, they leave the Triforce with the goddess Hylia. Here's some Triforce 101. Anyone who merely touches the Triforce will have their wish come true, as long as they have a balance of the three virtues, power, wisdom, and courage. If the would-be possessor doesn't have this balance, the Triforce splits apart, leaving the finder with whichever piece they most embody. Two random individuals are chosen by the goddesses to possess the other two pieces. The Triforce's power is much greater if all three pieces are united. And it doesn't distinguish between good and evil. Immediately thereafter, Era of the Goddess Hylia. After a while, the Demon King, Demise, arises and wants the Triforce to rule the world. He gathers a demon army and wages an epic battle against Hylia to steal the Triforce. In order to ensure their survival, Hylia gathers the remaining humans and the Triforce onto some land that she sends into the sky. This land would become known, appropriately, as Skyloft. Hylia and the remaining surface tribes defeat Demise and seal him away in the temple on the Isle of the Goddess. However, the seal isn't strong, and the Triforce can't be used by a goddess, which feels like a major oversight. Hylia entrusts Impa of the Sheikah tribe with safeguarding the sealed grounds, a role that would be passed down through Sheikah generations. Hylia is reborn as a human named Zelda. Decades later, Sky Era, Skyward Sword. Generations pass and Skyloft thrives. On the 25th anniversary of their sweet Knight Academy, Link passes a big test, but also Zelda is dragged to the surface by the demon lord Girahim, a follower of Demise who's been scattering demons across the surface. Link is visited by the spirit of the goddess sword, Fi, who informs him that he's Hylia's chosen hero. Impa, meanwhile, helps out Zelda. Then there's a whole story involving purifying, time jumping from the original Temple of Time, and long naps. Eventually, Link kills Demise, but not before the Demon King lays a curse, a never-ending cycle where the Demon King would be reincarnated with a thirst to take over the world, and a special hatred for those with the blood of the goddess and the spirit of the hero. Link shrugs it off, absorbs Demise into the Master Sword, and leaves the Master Sword in a pedestal in the sealed temple. Zelda moves to the surface to protect the Triforce. Era of Chaos. The surface becomes known as Hyrule. Many years of peace go by, but legends of the power of the Triforce eventually incite an era of chaos and violence. To protect the Triforce, the Sage of Light, Rauru, makes himself the guardian of the Light Temple in the Sacred Realm and places the Triforce inside it. Rauru seals the realm off from Hyrule, placing the only entrance in a new Temple of Time, which he builds over the ruins of the Sealed Temple. He closes off the Master Sword behind the Door of Time and scatters the keys, the 3 spiritual stones. Era of Prosperity. Rauru's intricate one-man plan works. Zelda's descendants establish the Kingdom of Hyrule and declare themselves the royal family, building their castle around the Temple of Time to protect the Triforce. Force Era, the Minish Cap. Hyrule is suddenly overwhelmed by evil, but lo, Picori descends from the sky and gives the hero of man a Picori blade and the Light Force. And yes, the Force has basically the same meaning as in Star Wars. The hero seals all the baddies in the bound chest, close tight with the blade. Zelda internalizes the Light Force. Watch for the Zelda light motif from now on. 100 years later, a shady mage named Vati breaks the Picori blade and opens the chest, hoping to find the Light Force. Instead, he releases a bunch of evil and turns Zelda to stone. Zelda's stone curse can only be broken with the Picori blade, and the blade can only be fixed by the Picori, and the Picori can only be seen by children. So, Smith the blacksmith volunteers his young apprentice, Link. While Vati has Hyrule under his thumb, Link eventually brings the 4 elements and a fixed Picori blade to a secret elemental sanctuary in Hyrule Castle. This restores the legendary Force Sword, which can split one warrior into 4. With the help of his sweet new sword and a convenient wishing cap, Link vanquishes Vati and the destruction of Hyrule is undone. 1 generation later, 4 swords. Vati suddenly reappears, but with no memory of the Light Force ordeal. He overtakes the Palace of Winds and dubs himself the Wind Mage. A hero dutifully swoops in with the Force Sword and defeats Vati, sealing him in a sword and enshrining him in the Elemental Sanctuary. Several more generations pass before the seal begins to weaken. Zelda and Link go in for a checkup one day to find it broken. In a cartoonish cliche, Vati whisks Zelda away to the Palace of Winds to become his bride. Link is instructed by fairies to unsheath the Force Sword and split into 4 different links upon doing so. The foursome then hones their skills, travels to the Palace of Winds, and defeats Vati. Vati is sealed in the Force Sword, which is returned to its pedestal. Link becomes one person once again. The era of the Hero of Time, Ocarina of Time. For countless eras, Hyrule descends into civil war. Why? We don't know. You start to wonder whether Nintendo is leaving certain things open on purpose. In the midst of this conflict, a woman flees to the Forbidden Forest and with her dying breath entrusts her baby to the deck.
I can't believe this is long.
but Impa flees with her orders from Zelda to find a hero. Just as demons catch up with her,
Something that you do to care for people. If you love to do that, then you're going to love the profession. It's truly a calling.
a young out-of-town traveler appears. Impa explains her plight, and Link agrees to take on the quest. This guy, by the way, is likely a descendant of Island Killer Link. And no, I haven't let it go. You can guess what happens. Link gathers the Triforce of Wisdom and uses it to beat Ganon. The Adventure of Link. Link hangs around Hyrule to help rebuild, but Ganon's cronies recoup and everything is torn up again. There's a rumor that Ganon can be resurrected by sacrificing Link and sprinkling his blood over Ganon's ashes. 6 years after he beat down Ganon, Link gets a weird mark on his hand and asks Impa about it. Impa takes him to Princess Zelda, the first's sleeping chamber. Well, she's not the first, but the first since her brother. Okay, you know what I mean. Turns out, Impa's line of nursemaids were the only ones who knew about it. Link can unseal the door with his crest, so Impa gives him a scroll made by the last great king. His crest enables him to read the scroll, and golly, it's a map to the Triforce of Courage. Link sets out, gets it, and uses its power to awaken sleeping Zelda. For some reason, this all means Ganon can't be resurrected. Maybe Link's too powerful for the dummy beast's dummies now. And so, peace and the full Triforce was restored to Hyrule. The end, for the third time. Or at least, I think so. We still have to address the timeline's richest mystery, Breath of the Wild. It's the only game not prescribed a spot on the timeline. Nintendo's purposefully leaving it to interpretation. We do know Breath of the Wild comes after, way after. Maybe so far in the future that it's the conclusion of all three timelines. We also have evidence for individual lines in Breath of the Wild. It's explicitly said that the Zora princess Ruto awakened as a sage, which only happens in the adult and fallen hero timelines. And there are the Koroks and the Rito, a strong case for the adult timeline. Except there's also Zoras? Then again, the villain isn't Ganondorf, but the demonized Ganon, an argument for the fallen hero timeline. Maybe at some point the timelines reconverge, courtesy of the mighty wizard Aonuma. Regardless, here's the possible end to the legend. 10,000 years before Breath of the Wild, Ganon is about to burst his seal again. To fight him, Zelda oversees the construction of autonomous guardians and 4 divine beasts, championed by chosen warriors of the Zora, Rito, Gerudo, and Goron. With the additional aid of the hero, Ganon is thoroughly overwhelmed and sealed once more. Why don't they just kill him? Seriously, because he'll just be resurrected again. Okay. These machines lay forgotten for thousands of years, until excavations unearth them just as Calamity Ganon begins stirring again. Now, Zelda reactivates the Guardians and chooses 4 new champions. But when Calamity Ganon attacks, he overrides control of the Guardians and the Divine Beasts. Hyrule was losing. Link's nearly killed in the conflict. Zelda brings him to the Shrine of Resurrection to save his life. Then, she heads back to the castle alone to seal Ganon herself. 100 years later, Breath of the Wild. When Link wakes up, he has amnesia, but looks incredibly good for his age. The same cannot be said of Hyrule. Zelda's seal is still saving everyone from the worst of Ganon's power, but keeping that up for 100 years isn't easy. After getting a handy parasail from the King's Ghost, Link finds Impa, who imparts Zelda's final message: free the 4 divine beasts. Long story short, Link frees the beasts and the spirit of the champions trapped within. He also regains some memories and finds the Master Sword in the Lost Woods, where Zelda had left it under the protection of the Great Deathly Tree. Teamwork defeats
That was a very long video. This one's even longer. I think this one is okay.
LP Smart Side Expert Finish for the beauty of finish.
What you seek is seeking you.
Wow.
A long time ago, the world was in an age of chaos. In the midst of this chaos, in a little kingdom in the land of Hyrule, a legend was being handed down from generation to generation. The legend of the Triforce. Golden triangles possessing mystical powers. Golden triangles? Are you serious? That's the legend? Anyway, let's keep going. One day, an evil army attacked this peaceful little kingdom and stole the Triforce of power. This army was led by Ganon, the powerful Prince of Darkness who sought to plunge the world into fear and darkness under his rule. And it was from that simple legend that spawned one of Nintendo's biggest franchises, a cultural phenomenon, and a really complicated and confusing timeline. But most importantly, it pioneered the adventure genre for decades to come. So welcome my friends to the troubled world of Hyrule. Hey everyone, and welcome to Nintendo 101, where I go over any game from Nintendo's past and show the prints it left on the gaming industry, no matter how terrible that print may be. I'm Balrog, your professor, and today we're going to go over what exactly makes The Legend of Zelda on NES so special. But before we can do that, we gotta travel back to the past. 1976 to be exact, where video games were... oh boy. So, let's get started. So our story begins on a mainframe computer known as the PDP-10, with a small title called Colossal Cave Adventure. Riveting, I know. Now despite being text only, this game essentially created the adventure genre all those years ago, allowing players to move freely and solve the mysteries of the cave on their own. The game setting was even based on an actual cavern, Mammoth Cave, so if you happen to be a seasoned spelunker and gamer, you could actually navigate the place on your first try. Except there's a talking plant and a dwarf throws an axe. What? But you know you're probably thinking, what does this all have to do with Zelda? And why am I starting all the way at the beginning of adventure games? Well, a few years later, a man named Warren Robinette tasked himself with the ultimate challenge, porting this fancy cave thing to the Atari 2600, a home console. Now, if that sounds crazy to you, that's because it should. This sounded almost impossible on paper. Turning a text-based game into a graphical one? Even his boss was like, that ain't happening, man, and told him it was just impossible to do. But despite all odds, Adventure was released in 1979 and sold over 1 million copies, something extremely rare for games at that time. So what do you do in this wildly successful game exactly? Are there any plants begging for water this time? Well, as expected, Robinette took a lot of liberties with this premise. The point of Adventure is to get a chalice back to a golden castle, and you do so by completing a bunch of mazes and slaying some dragons. Okay, that's not even close to a dragon. Is that like an ostrich or something?
Or
it's very simple,
horse.
hence why you're a square, but it had a lot of groundbreaking features for the time. The first Easter egg in the game, which was the creator's name, you gotta start somewhere, right? A continue feature if you die, holding items without 1 million text commands, and difficulty levels, including one that even randomizes the location of items. It's just awesome, and it gives the game replay value even after you beat it the first time. And thanks to all this, Adventure would eventually go on to be the foundation of graphical RPGs and, you guessed it, action-adventure games, though a lot of them failed to capture the same success. But one day, Adventure would influence 2 aspiring game developers in Japan, to the point that they wanted to make their own version. So, let's talk about them, shall we? Alright, so back in the mid-1980s, Takashi Tezuka and Shigeru Miyamoto were both part of Nintendo's creative department. Miyamoto had already designed several successful Famicom games, or NES games outside of Japan, such as Excite Bike, Ice Climber, and Devil World. In fact, Devil World was also the first game Tezuka made with Nintendo, though Devil World never came to North America for obvious reasons. So as you could guess, after they worked on this project together, these guys were pretty close and actually still develop games together to this day, for better or for worse. But their next 2 projects, now known as Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, had a completely different development process. These 2 games were to be made simultaneously, and be created as total opposites, going as far to call gameplay ideas Zelda ideas and Mario ideas. Super Mario Bros. Was meant to be a more linear and scripted action game, with a trade of high scores and jumping and shrooms. While The Legend of Zelda, originally just called Adventure, see where I'm going with this, was made to be more open world and really make the player think about where to go or strategize their next move. Heck, Mario was even designed to be the Famicom swan song, while Zelda was the first game developed for the Famicom Disk System, a new peripheral for the console that was mainly created for more memory. And an extra music channel. But just calling The Legend of Zelda an open-world adventure game doesn't do the game justice at all. Miyamoto didn't just want to expand on adventure, he wanted to create a miniature garden that players could put inside their drawer. He wanted players to experience the exploring he did as a child, going through fields, woods, and caves. And most importantly, he based the dungeons on the maze of sliding doors in his old house. I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried. But the lengths that Miyamoto took to realize this dream were quite harsh. While Tezuka was in charge of making the story and setting, Miyamoto was getting people in Japan to test the prototype, and players had no idea what they were doing. Dungeons had multiple paths in the game, the enemy patterns were difficult, and a lot of people just complained that they were getting lost. But instead of listening to those criticisms, Miyamoto took the sword away from them, forcing players to work together to solve these puzzles. Now, as mean as it sounds, this kind of communication actually helped pioneer the way we think about games today. with more recent ways being online message boards, Nintendo's social network known as Miiverse, or heck, just getting your friends to help you out. But still, I would have hated to be those game testers. Now as for the game itself, there were a lot of changes from the beta version to the final version. For starters, the Armos enemies, these statue guys that just kinda go nuts when you touch them, come to life twice as fast. Some of the enemies' health points and attack damages were doubled, and on top of that, you originally had a choice between the boomerang or a sword at the beginning of the game, but was changed to only the sword. Almost all these changes were to make the game harder, so we can only assume who was responsible. But despite all that, when all these elements came together, we got one of the best action-adventure games ever made. So it's time to see what this game's all about. Alright, so the plot here is pretty simple. As I said at the beginning of the video, Ganon steals the Triforce of Power so he can rule the world. However, in order to complete this task, he must also obtain the Triforce of Wisdom, which Zelda conveniently broke and hidden in different dungeons. After she gets kidnapped by Ganon, or Ganon in the original text, which is all in broken English by the way, one who does not have the Triforce can't go, no, it's not done. Her nursemaid Impa has to find someone brave enough to get these golden triangles and save Hyrule, which ends up being you, Link. So now you have to go through 8 different dungeons for the fragments and defeat Ganon on Death Mountain in a final battle. Now this may not sound like much today, but having lore and backstory in a game was pretty rare back then, unless they made some crap up on the box. The young knight, Jim, has a tough challenge. He must avenge the death of his king and save Princess Anne? Oh boy. It gives you a purpose to beat the game, rather than being some random dude doing random things to save some random world. So anyway, let's talk about the gameplay itself, and what better place to start than the very first screen in the game. And whether it seems like it or not, this one screen changed the way we thought about adventure games forever. So, if you'll notice at the top of the screen, the game immediately tells you what buttons do what. And right now, you only have a shield without any way to attack. Before this game came out, a lot of action RPGs started you out with a sword, so where's the sword? Well, luckily there's a blatantly obvious cave in the corner here, so when you stroll on in and go inside, guess what? The wizard gives you a sword. So from this little encounter alone, you've learned the following things. A, you're weak as hell without a weapon. B, if you go in caves, you'll find tons of cool stuff, so you should definitely go in all of them. And C, you know the button layout of the entire game. Now back in 1986, this didn't happen very often. Adventure games almost always required you to read a manual or struggle with the game until you learn the mechanics, but Zelda lays its rules to you clear as day, and because of that, the game almost always feels difficult while still being fair. But Miyamoto didn't just stop there. Just like he envisioned, the game's exactly like that miniature garden, in which it allows you to play the way you want to play. Want to explore? No problem, just slay some enemies, get some rupees, or I don't know, buy some items, and try them everywhere. If you explore long enough, you'll find tons of secrets like heart containers or weapon upgrades, or hey, you might just bomb someone's front door. Wait, how did they even get out of their house? But hey, no, maybe exploring's not your thing. Maybe you're seeking a challenge and you just want to jump straight into dungeons. Well, luckily for you, you can tackle the first 8 levels in any order you like, especially since you probably won't find them in order. In fact, the world record speedrun holder, known as Darkwing Duck, starts with the 3rd dungeon, so you can try that, if you trust the terror that flaps in the night. However, some dungeons do require certain items to progress, so if you do get ahead of yourself, you're probably walking straight to your own demise. In short, the experience you have with the overworld really depends on the player. You can blast through the game at any pace you like, but at the same time, the game will thoroughly reward you for exploring, and as a result makes it a lot easier for you to complete. But these dungeons, well, let's just say they're not for the faint of heart. Despite the simplistic and rectangular look to them, each one has vicious enemies and puzzles waiting for you. Prepare to die a lot, and to learn something new about the dungeons every single time. There's tons of passageways to find with hidden items. You can get hints from wizards about boss fights, as cryptic as they are, and most importantly, you can take all of this information in to create your own strategy. And that's really what made these dungeons stand out. Each dungeon felt fresh, and you had to think through each one in a very different way. Also, similar to Super Mario Bros., most enemies had their own personalities, with distinct attack patterns and weak points. And to top it off, the way to conquer these dungeons were extremely versatile, so every player came up with different solutions. There was no definitive way to win, but we'll get back to that later, because despite all this, and as Miyamoto intended, it's almost guaranteed you're going to get stuck. You're going to get frustrated, and if you weren't part of Nintendo Fun Club at the time, or you couldn't call the Nintendo Game Counselor hotline, yes, that actually existed, you had another tool, the manual. Now I know what I said before, thanks to the way this game is structured, you'll eventually figure it out on your own, but in this case, you'd really be missing out. Unlike today's games with digital manuals and virtual coins to get you freaking notebooks. Club Nintendo's pretty awesome, by the way. Manuals since the Atari days have been chock full of information, and Zelda is no exception. This manual goes on to explain everything you need to know about the underworld and overworld in detail. Every item in the game, a tutorial up to the 2nd dungeon, and most importantly, descriptions of all the main enemies and bosses. The booklet's riddled with hints too, so it's worth it to pay attention to the fine prints. Attack Domo's weak point with a special weapon. Dig Dogger shriveled up when attacked. These pictures show some hints about the labyrinth. Oh, that is a swastika! So now you're armed with knowledge, ready to kick Ganon's butt and know the structure of the Miyamoto household? It's time to go over its impact! Now, as you might have guessed, with such innovative gameplay, the fact it's one of Nintendo's main series, the game was a smash hit and sold over 6 million gold-painted units. But you see, what made Zelda influential was way beyond just the gameplay. So let's go over what that is. First off, there was the commercials, with the infamous Zelda rap.
I'm pretty bad. After architect takes me.
And, this guy. You know, the funny thing about these commercials is that this is actually Nintendo going all out. Their budgets could go up to $5 million, which is 4 to 5 times higher than normal ones at the time. And since there weren't that many Nintendo games back then, each one really had to count. But somehow this craziness worked, and Nintendo continued to make these quirky commercials for many more years. Some better than others. There was also the inclusion of the second quest, a feature eventually used in many other Zelda games, with secrets hidden in completely different places, rearranged dungeons that actually spell Zelda, which is kinda cool, and just making the game harder in subtle ways, like multiple boss fights in the same dungeon. Oh god! But the most interesting thing about them is that it was created off of an accident. You see, Tezuka admitted that when they finished the game, they only used half of the cartridge's memory space. So instead of just shipping it out as is, they decided to make this ridiculously hard second quest, where you'll learn to hate these guys. A lot. Third up was the music, composed by Koji Kondo, who was also responsible for the Super Mario Bros. Soundtrack. It may not sound like much today, but back in the days where NES music mostly sounded like this, or this, oh god, make it stop. This soundtrack was just awesome. You see, Kondo always strives to make a soundtrack that can never get repetitive. He'll literally just sit in his chair and listen to his own music for hours on loop, and if he doesn't get sick of it in that time, he believes he succeeded. And since a lot of Zelda songs loop every, 40 seconds? That's a pretty amazing accomplishment, and I'd say millions of gamers and many other music remixers influenced by Zelda would agree. There is a battery save inside the cartridge, or disc if you had the disc system, which, big surprise, lets you save the game. Unlike the days where you had to put some long 30-something character password in. Okay, I'll stop picking on you now. Zelda lets you jump right back into action while not having to keep your console on overnight, only to realize your parent or guardian turned it off the next morning. Yeah, I know that happened to all of you. And as I was saying earlier, there was no definitive way to beat the game, and therefore people made speedruns with different rules, such as having 3 hearts only, no sword or the wooden sword only, or just beating it 100%. This game would go on to be one of the most popular speedrun games in history, and helped birth this pastime in the gaming community. But despite all this praise, we still have one question to go over. How does this game hold up today? Well, honestly, it depends on your level of patience. You see, the problem with the game that redefines the genre is that, over the years, people try to add more to the formula. Game developers made adventure games more accessible. There were so many sequels to the series that advanced the Zelda formula. And the graphics, well, let's just say the later NES games trumped them by quite a bit. But if you go in the game with everything I told you in mind, the miniature garden Miyamoto made, the features the game became known for, and the origins of the genre up until this game, I personally think you'll still have a blast with it. So despite what the sequel may have brought, Zelda 1 has remained a slightly aged classic, so get it on your 3DS, Wii U, Game Boy Advance, whatever, and give it a go and see what you think. This has been the history of The Legend of Zelda, and you have been educated. So until next time, I gotta figure out how to put these back on my keychain. I blame you. Hey everyone, and thanks for watching this video. I'd like to give a huge shout out to my friend Nico for helping me out with all the graphics in this segment, so big thanks to him, and you should check him out on Twitter to see all his other projects. I really could not have done this project without him, so big thanks again. And as for my next projects, I have another Nintendo 101 coming up very soon of Super Smash Bros, so stay tuned for that. So in the meantime, if you like what you see, be sure to like, subscribe, whatever, and I'll see you guys next time with more videos. Adios!
Alright guys, so I'll see you next on Nico's channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. There are no comments, so I'll see you tomorrow on Paper Mario The Origami King Try Not to Die Challenge. Have a nice day guys, and bye.